So, what makes me cranky about Doctor Strange? After all, it is the latest entry in the juggernaut that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so who could possibly find a reason to get cranky about it, right? Especially with all these really big checks that Disney sends out to never mind about that. Joking aside, here's an easy one. I'm sick of sitting through the credits for a post-credit scene that sucks. Try saying that 3 times fast. If you're not going to make the post-credit sequence count, don't waste my time. It seems like every movie has to do one now, thanks to Marvel having started this craze in the first place, but most of them are not funny, and they add nothing to the movie. Now Marvel's up to 2 stingers at the end of every movie, one in the mid-credits and one after they're done, and in Doctor Strange they're in the wrong order, because the one at the very end sucks. The middle one is awesome, and probably the best one they've done since Nick Fury first walked in and said the words Avengers Initiative. But the one at the end is the kind of totally lame, but there's a new threat coming sequel teaser that you'd normally roll your eyes at before the credits, much less after sitting through the massive list of CGI guys it takes to make these movies now. Of course, if the new threat is anything like the one in this movie, it ain't gonna be much of a threat, which is my biggest complaint about Doctor Strange. Look, I love most of these Marvel movies, but they just have a terrible record in the villain department. I don't even remember this guy's name. Something that starts with a K, I think, but on the rare occasion I heard it, it was just sort of mumbled like nobody on set really knew how to pronounce it. He's just another one of these guys who spends most of his time standing there trying and failing to look menacing, and almost all the rest of it engaged in semi-magical hand-to-hand combat. It's a pity, because the extremely brief look we get into the guy suggests there could have been an incredible villain story interwoven against our heroes here, but the movie just doesn't care enough about the guy to bother. It just exposition dumps the bare minimum you need to know about him and moves on. He doesn't even stand out when it comes to the combat, because the fights are mostly the visual equivalent of people mumbling his name. It's very rarely clear what's going on, because it's shot very close up and with lots of quick cuts and similarly dressed red shirts all over the place. He doesn't even seem particularly more adept at it than his flunkies, and doesn't distinguish himself with any kind of technique or weapon or even dialogue. Strange's side at least has some flashy magic that stands out, but all the baddies use like magical slivers of glass or something, which are mostly transparent and hard to track in motion. Great for the villains that it's got to be difficult to defend against that sort of thing, but very confusing for me as an audience member trying to follow the action. Then you add the crazy reality bending stuff where gravity is changing directions and buildings are being rolled up behind people like carpets, and it just turns into a really trippy, confusing mess. And ultimately, the guy's just a waste of time anyway, because once again, we have a situation where our bad guy has a badder master who's ripping open the sky above a major city so he can destroy the world. The only reason I'm not about to go on a 15-minute rant about how tired I am of seeing this exact same sequence yet again is that Doctor Strange at least puts a cool, albeit very small, twist on it that I won't spoil for you. But seriously, can we give these guys at least one movie before they're battling for the fate of the world? Maybe put the whole dangerous light show above a major city thing in a drawer for a decade or so and give some other potential conflicts a chance to shine for a while? So yeah, there's reasons to be cranky about Doctor Strange. But, and this is the but at the heart of Marvel's continuing success, it's still fun. Marvel's just got a great formula for mixing action, comedy, and world building in such a way that even if something isn't working, like the fights, they've got something else going on to take the pressure off of it. Even though I find a lot of the fighting confusing, the fights don't go on so long that it gets to the point where you're just bored and you start to tune out, because they'll throw a joke in there to keep you laughing until the fight's over, or they'll pause for a second to showcase Strange learning something new. One of the best instances of that is when they introduced the cape, which has so much personality I think we're going to have to make an exception to the no capes rule just for it. It reminded me a lot of the magic carpet from Aladdin in that way. So if you're going into this expecting the usual Marvel formula, you're not going to be disappointed. I'm not super familiar with the comic book version of the character, so I don't know how accurate it is to the source material, but the movie Doctor Strange is basically the sorcerer version of Iron Man. He's an egotistical genius who falls from grace and becomes a hero in part because of a serious medical condition, and in part because his eyes are open to a bunch of stuff he didn't realize before. Is it as good as Iron Man? No. If for no other reason than Robert Downey Jr. is just better at doing the arrogant, smart-ass playboy thing than Benedict Cumberbatch is. Especially since it seemed like Cumberbatch had to work to suppress his natural accent at times, which was kind of distracting. But there are places that it does do things better. Strange has his own love interest, played by Rachel McAdams, that he's danced around for years, just like Tony and Pepper Potts did. But Cumberbatch and McAdams have much more chemistry than Downey Paltrow, and certainly way more than that god-awful Hemsworth-Portman pairing from the Thor movies. Also, this movie pissed off the social justice warriors because they got all upset about Tilda Swinton playing the all-powerful wizard mentor called the Ancient One that teaches Strange how magic works, and that's always a bonus. I actually think she did a great job with it and had just the right mix of hard-ass drill instructor, wise teacher, and suspiciously secretive know-it-all. And having somebody around who could put a smartass like Strange in his place made for a fun dynamic. So where does that put it in the overall pantheon of Marvel hits to date? Well, I'd say right about smack dab in the middle. It's not anywhere near the heights of Winter Soldier or Civil War, and despite having lots of similarities to Iron Man, like I said, that movie's much better overall. But it isn't a total mess like Iron Man 2, nor the kind of boring slog you often got in the Thor movies. I was actually surprised at how fast it was over because I never felt like the movie was particularly rushing or anything. It actually felt very much like the first episode of a TV show that I'd like to see more of, Like most pilots, it's rough enough that I didn't feel compelled to turn around and watch it again, but it did establish a world and characters that I find interesting and look forward to seeing more of now that they got the origin story stuff out of the way. Looking back, I kind of wish they had skipped the origin and gone straight to being a master sorcerer, but God forbid we do anything like that. Ultimately, it's a Marvel movie. If you like them, go see it. If you're ambivalent about them, wait on it. And if you don't like them, well, what the hell's wrong with you? So that's my take on Doctor Strange. I look forward to your comments below. Rabid fanboys are welcome. And as always, I hope the spell I wove to conjure up this review will compel you to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel.